You are listening to MHTAW. It's me, your grandpa. Please visit more often. Now I'm passing the mic to Mike.
Thank you, Grandpa. I hope we get to see each other next Christmas. You might have heard about Scotland possibly leaving UK. People up there even got a chance to vote on it in 2014. They rejected it 55 to 44. Plaid Cymru in Wales has advocated for the same. In Northern Ireland, there are some advocating for merger with Ireland, others for independence, and naturally some people want to stay. But have you heard about advocation for the northern independence? And northern in this case does not refer to Scotland. It refers on the area that is marked on the map right there in that image. And what would this be called? Well, according to this party, what they call it is Northumbria. Northumbria? I don't know how to pronounce this, but I have read this before, and you probably have as well if you are familiar with UK history. And if you are not, do not worry, I will explain it. Northumbria was a kingdom in the past in that region. UK has previously been different ethnicities and different kingdoms throughout a long history, and control over these areas has changed. Now for a long time the Anglo-Saxon people have been controlling the country from London. However, many areas have a lot of autonomy. For example, the Scotland and the Wales have a lot of autonomy, and some regions inside what we would call England also has autonomy, and then Northern Ireland has by some standards the most, due to the complicated nature with Ireland, which also was part of UK not so long ago, in the last century. Now what would this scenario look like? Here we have the map. You can see Scotland, you can see Wales, and you can see England. And now we have learned about Northumbria. Anyway, now we have learned about this new country. It's there. And then we also have Island of Man. We have Kent looking really suspicious. There's even no flag. The man is practically naked. And then we have, and I need to check, I'm ignorant. Cornwall, okay. Yeah, it's Cornwall, because I remember that place, but I didn't remember the name. And now you know that there is no script. That might explain a lot of things. Now Cornwall, the thing is, that part used to be quite separate for a long time, and actually the language that they had survived quite long after English, compared to the low amount of population that they had. And actually, if we go to the biological heritage, I think a lot of those people will be quite separate from the English, because they are not so mixed with the Anglo-Saxon people, and they might be quite Celtic to this day. Now Celts are the people who used to live in UK before some other people arrived, and then other people arrived, and then other people, you know, there has been a lot of things going on there. But mainly the proposal that some people have done when it comes to this map is the Celtic alliance, which would be Scotland, Northumbria, at least parts of it, and Wales, like together. I don't see that happening at all, but this proposal that they have right here, let me quickly go country by country. Of course, England will manage on its own. It has London. Like some people, especially because the Tories, the Conservative Party, are in power, have advocated that London could be independent. Well, of course it could be, like any major city, if it has coastal area, can be independent. And like not necessarily even with the coast, but especially if they have with the coast. Like any major city in the West, if they would become independent, it would be a success if the country where they live from accepts this. Because then they can just have the similar status that Monaco, if they're a little bit bigger, Luxembourg, Hong Kong, Singapore, they can try to have that kind of status. They might not function as well as these areas, but they could, of course, financially they would be more successful than now. Like, it would be better for London. It's just like, I don't see it happening at all, but it would be financially better for London. And for a Londoner, it might not be a great idea, especially if you live on rent, because Hong Kong, Singapore, the rents will skyrocket. And the Londoner identity, like in these big cities, even in Singapore, the identity is kinda like, outside of the Chinese people there, the identity is really, I would say, like, non-existent. Like, it does exist, but the reason it exists is because Singapore has been independent for some time now, so the schools have been able to push it a little bit, because all this identity and everything, it comes from the school very much with the average people, unless there are some significant differences that make you different. For example, what Ireland and UK used to have, what Northern Ireland and Ireland have right now. So anyway, Northern Ireland, I could see them merging with Ireland. There is a lot of political things going on there, a lot of differences, although the religious differences are becoming less and less. But actually now Northern Ireland is more conservative than the actual Ireland. So I think those conservatives, if they think in terms of how much political control I have over my life, it would be a bad idea to merge, because they are gonna get wrecked by those parties over there. And for Ireland it wouldn't be a problem because there's more people there. And economically, it depends what's going on with the UK, which one is better. Because the thing is that, for example, the Northumbria is arguing that they don't get enough allocation of resources from the UK, or what would be England. But a lot of these places also get a lot of support from UK, so it's a complicated thing. Although Northumbria, is true that they don't get as much because they don't have autonomy. Scotland, Wales, and many of some other areas here have some level of autonomy, and Northern Ireland especially. So they in some ways benefit in being from UK. And now with the Kent, there's no chance of independence. Some people propose like joining France. That would make sense, but there will be a lot of problems, like the language and stuff. Like, then it would be like an autonomous part of France, which would be possible the same way the colonial regimes of France are. But I think the language would become a big barrier, because France to this day is a strong advocate of its language, and I don't think a lot of people in Kent speak French. So that would be a big problem in the future for them, because that would push them to go study outside of Kent in UK instead of France, which then would make this whole arrangement kind of silly, because people want to avoid problems with education, they want to avoid problems with work. But in France you really need French, and both in schools and in education. So they would have to do constantly special arrangements for people from Kent. So practically they would have more opportunities in the English-speaking countries. So I don't see a lot of benefit with Kent from that. And I don't see that England will just throw Kent out. And then just Cornwall too small, the Isle of Man too small. Even Wales is like too small. And the Wales identity, they have been propping it up lately. So there is some hope there. But anyway, overall I would say the chances are low. They are the highest with Scotland. And with Northumbria, if this party would become a big success, then the chances would be quite good. Because, Northumbria, they got a lot of backing for UKIP and Brexit party at times. So there is a lot of frustration against Westminster. Not saying that that's the only reason to vote for those guys, but there is a lot of frustration with Westminster. So there would be potential for the party, and it's a social democratic party, so it has a lot of potential to appeal to these people in a populistic way, and otherwise too. But it's gonna have to compete with Labour a lot, and there will be a lot of overlap, which will make it very difficult, because first past the post system, which UK has, which like in one area only one candidate survives. So if this party would become stronger, it would split the vote, and then there would be more Tory and more Liberal Democrat and more other MPs coming out of there. So support of this party would be very difficult. It would require people from Labour joining it, I think MPs joining it, and even that has been proven not very effective because a lot of MPs have joined minor parties, not a lot of success there. Now, let us look what does Northern Independence Party stand for, what are its principles, etc. They have a long article and other stuff on their website, you can check out there for more, but this is just a simplification that they made, the main points that they want to propose. It has 1.4 thousand likes on Twitter, it's their pinned post, you can see it when you go there, they have marked it to the top, and they have almost 20,000 likes, which of course for a party is quite low, but for a minor party quite good. And its proposals are, and I like the color scheme by the way that they have been picked, like it. Okay, they demand a referendum. Okay, in my English moment, they demand a vote on Northern independence by the public, and then advances a democratic socialist North. So they are social democrats, and now Labour is quite social democratic party, although some people would argue that they are not, but yeah, they are offering that. But SNP, the Scottish Nationalist Party, is in my opinion very much social democratic, and some of them are also saying that. In Wales a little bit less, the party that they have over there, but this is quite standard. Like in UK, the regional parties are not like nationalistic, like in some countries. Instead, they are a little more left-leaning, because they are the alternative to Labour, more so than like alternative to Tories. And people in this area especially tend to be a little bit more left. Like this used to be very strong Labour area. Now it's kind of more complicated. And then it advocates a green industrial rebirth. Now they have some more points on this which make it a little bit unique, but this is very much a standard. Like if you are even a little bit to the left, you support the green industry, that kind of things. So this is like they are showing that they are not only one issue party, so that's nice. And then they oppose all racism and anti-refugee rhetoric. Now this is quite common because outside of UK, something that you might have seen images of is that the Welsh National Party, I think it was the Welsh one, they had this like girl in a hijab, and actually not only hijab, I think niqab. Okay, I might be ignorant on that, but hijab is the one where the face is still visible, and then there are burqa, which is you cover the face all over, and then there's niqab, which is kind of like only part of it. But anyway, like the eyes were visible, but a lot of the face was covered, if I remember correctly. But at least she had a very like Islamic dress, and a lot of people of course were critical of saying that like how is it the nationalistic, because the nationalistic parties in UK are not like nationalistic by blood, they are instead nationalistic by the region, like they are regionalist parties really, because it's not even about the culture as much. Also, although these guys do advocate for the culture a lot, but especially in Wales and Scotland it's very much about the region. Like you will meet people who are just totally English, but they still support those parties and are members of those parties because they support the region itself, and it does make sense for those people at least. So this is quite standard, like, and I don't see any party in UK not opposing all racism and anti-refugee rhetoric, except in some of the Brexit party and some of the UKIP, and now those parties are, it's kind of over for those parties. And if Nigel Farage does something, then it will be heavily against racism, but there will be some anti-refugee stuff, of course, as he has posted. And then builds on our traditions of solidarity. And now this is more about the cultural stuff that I talked about previously. And it just means that they believe that in Northumbria there is a culture of more like basically left-wing, economically speaking, ideas. And I think that is very much true. more left-wing policy is popular. And if Northumbria would be independent, it would be much more left-wing than UK is now. And Scotland too, and Wales too. But then on the other hand, if those places would become independent, then there would start to be this right-wing movement inside there too, which then can also win. Because almost every country has strong right-wing and left-wing parties, except Portugal and some other places. But in Europe, usually, for example, Basque country, the independence advocates are quite left-wing, and in Catalonia especially. But if Catalonia would become independent, we would see a split there of the more right-wing nationalists and of the left-wing nationalists. And even now we can see some of the split. Thank you for listening. If you made it this far, it's certainly a subscription time. And remember to smash that like too.